Well, it's officially winter, work has finally slowed down, I've got my oat nog, and I've got nothing but time to sit and watch a nice, relaxing, square, non-freaky movie. Let's check it out. Wow. Shabadoo. What the hell? So, just to start us off here, from what I've gathered, this movie's supposed to be, in a way, an homage to fantasy films of the past. Specifically movies that utilize puppetry, sci-fi in some cases, and whimsical themes or tropes to immerse young ones into a fun alternate world. Now, basic machines or automatons have been used since ancient times in some way or another for entertainment, but it wasn't until the 1960s when Walt Disney debuted his version of animatronics in his first lifelike machine, which was none other than Abraham Lincoln, a person for who he had great admiration. Walt Disney was the first person to coin the term audio animatronics. He went on to develop an entire exhibit of these machines that played with both their sense of sight and sound. Even before that, some familiar constructs had made their way to 1939's World Fair, such as mechanical fortune tellers and a functioning, moving model known as the galloping horse. This inspired toy makers in Europe to create smaller, crank-operated machines for children, as well as many other types of toys using the same generic blueprint. What a game changer. By the 1970s, film directors were making extensive use of far more advanced versions of these lifelike, clinking, clanking, clattering collections of collisionous junk, seen in films such as Jaws, Alien, The Exorcist, the 1976 adaptation of King Kong, and Star Wars, just to name a few. By the 1980s, children's restaurant chains like Chuck E. Cheese and its competitors Showbiz Pizza had introduced live animatronic shows to entertain kids while they ate crappy pizza. At this point, directors had really stepped things up in the animatronics department. Movies like The Thing, Gremlins, E.T., The Fly, Labyrinth, Dark Crystal, RoboCop, and yet again Star Wars, Return of the Jedi, and The Empire Strikes Back had combined practical effects as well as the use of remote-controlled animatronics in a way that the world had never seen before. This revolutionized the film industry in a big way. The 80s were arguably the golden age of automation in film, in my opinion. After Terminator 2, 1991, and Jurassic Park, 1993, we began to see a massive decline with the use of animatronics with directors. My speculation is that in the world of mechanical effects, things had reached their peak. Nobody could top Steven Spielberg's work, nor did many try, and by this time, computer-generated imaging had become more of a prominent form of special effects used. But not only that, it was arguably more affordable. See, Steven Spielberg had managed to blend CGI, practical effects, and animatronic tools together to create something nobody had ever seen before, and it shows with the quality of his work over the years. The use of animatronics required engineers and specialists to create such devices, let alone another person to operate them during shoots. So one could understand how lower-budget film directors would try to cut corners or look for more affordable alternatives to using such costly mechanisms. They weren't completely disregarded from here on out though, because in many situations they were still used for stunts, specific types of shots, or just by people who didn't mind the costly maintenance and preferred to use them for their particular film style. Speaking of which, director-producer Steven Kostanski, responsible for such movies as The Void, Psycho Gorman, and VHS 94, has brought to fruition yet another hit with this movie, in my opinion. Would you keep it down? I'm trying to make a video! Frankie Freako follows the story of a totally normal, nerdy goober named Connor Sweeney, played by, well, Connor Sweeney. His carefully constructed self-image starts to crack when both his boss and his wife, as kindly and politely as possible, point out that he's a bit of a square. When his wife heads out of town for a work event, Connor's left alone with his thoughts, reflecting on who he is to her, to his boss, and ultimately to himself. As the weekend unfolds, he realizes it might be time to be honest about who he really is, break from the routine, and inject a little excitement into his life. In the midst of this realization, a weirdly seductive commercial that has plagued him for the past couple of nights on TV comes on once more to further coax him into calling the phone number that it mentions for a good time. In the commercial, a laid-back woman's voice seems to be talking directly to him, which makes him want to call the number even more. Despite his wife advising him not to call those kinds of numbers, after seeing the commercial so many times, and even seeing the ad in a phone book. Wait a minute. A phone book? When did this movie come out? 2024. Who the hell still has a phone book in 2024? Anyways, after having seen so many commercials and ads for the hotline, he decides it would be exciting, spontaneous, and unexpected of him to call the number anyways, and that's when chaos begins to ensue. A trio of 3-foot-tall goblin humanoid-like freakos appear like magic and do what they do best. Frankie Freako is a cool, party-loving demon freak. He dons a studded leather jacket and some killer shades. He's the leader of the Freak Fugitive Trio. His aesthetic is reminiscent of the prominent punk era of the 1980s. Boink Bardo is a cyborg freako who has a knack for engineering. Every trope group in an 80s movie had an inventor or somebody whose specialty involved technology. Shabba-doo. Dottie Dunko is a gunslinging cowgirl. She only misses her shots when she wants to send a message. Also, speaking of which, what was the deal with the cowboy aesthetic back in the 80s? I've never understood that. Just a little bit before my time, so maybe I'll never get it. They party, wreck the house, wreck Connor's boss, wreck the house some more, and take the fun all the way to the freaky land of Freaklore, which Connor quickly learns is ruled by Freak President Munch, a dictator of the once thriving land. Freak President Munch sends killer robots to retrieve the fugitive trio after trapping them in the house with a giant magical barrier. These robot guys are awesome. They remind me of the killer robots from The Nightmare Before Christmas. The gang is then transported to the land of Freaklore via telephone. An Easter egg to Bill and Ted, maybe? In the midst of being transported, it looks like Connor is turning into a freak himself, which would have been a really cool angle to see the movie from, but it doesn't take and he goes back to normal. And this is probably my one minor complaint about this movie. I think it would have been a fun, fish out of water type trope to play with, but maybe it just wasn't in the budget, or maybe the production ran out of time or something, I don't know. The evil President Munch confronts the gang and eventually follows them back to the human world where they face off. Connor uses his untamable sex appeal to lure President Munch to a trap only for... Wait, Frankie could have used his demon fire powers the whole time? Yeah, he could have used them the whole time. Just another classic movie trope. Anyways, after all is said and done, the quad wrap things up with a classic clean the house montage. Like the main character's a kid who just got done with a massive house party while his parents were out of town. Just another movie trope. Everything's perfect, right? No. Not quite. The house still looks like a complete disaster. But it all works out anyways, because that's how these kinds of movies always end. The guy gets the girl, in this case his own wife, nobody's upset, and everybody is happy. Oh, also, this is a Christmas movie. Frankie Freako feels like a heartfelt love letter to the past, and it's absolutely amazing. The first time I saw it, I half thought an 80s puppet movie had somehow slipped under my radar, like one of those iconic yet niche gems from the past. I love it. From the special effects, to the animatronics, to the music, it kind of reminds me of Monkey Bone, except it isn't complete fucking garbage. It's disturbing in a good way. The characters are gross, and the gore is quite visceral at times. Connor analyzes things and make them seem like they have some deeper meaning, but they really don't, which is a hilarious reference to how older movies would attempt to turn things unique to their universe into an almost all-encompassing explanation for real-world concepts. He'll say something you think will have a big build-up and a payoff to something else, but it's just nonsense filler talk, which they do on purpose. It's quite funny.
Sector subdivisions. Of course.
The freaks all have their iconic gimmicks or catchphrases too. While they are very one-dimensional, which is again intentionally done, they're still very amusing. Also, a little side note, many of the guys from Red Letter Media such as Colin Cunningham, Mike Stacklasa, and Jay Bowman are in this movie. Now, I'm a big fan of Best of the Worst. And speaking of which, it completely went over my head, but Rich Evans is the evil mob boss, President Munch, which is also super cool. Now, as much as I want to go into every single detail in the story, I think it's better to just experience it for yourself, and I've already revealed way more about the movie than I even wanted to in the first place. So just give it a watch, you won't regret it. And with that, I say to you, Shabadoo, happy holidays, and let your freak flag fly.